Think I've solved all of our mic problems. So I think I am finally and officially back. Somebody asked me a question about aliens. So if you're back, I will answer your alien question when you get back. For the uninitiated, my name is Vin. I am one half of the amazing duo Vin and Sori. And you could say either I woke up very, very early or I'm staying up really, really late. I'll let you be the judge of that. Okay, Ron, I don't know if you were the guy that asked the question, but hopefully I had everything fixed. So if you had a question, repost it, and I'll do my best to try to answer it to the best of my ability. I think you said something about aliens. Copy it. Okay, copy and paste it. You said something about aliens. Um, so copy it again. Let me see if I was asking. I was trying to answer the right question before I was disappeared by the goons in social media. Nobody disappeared me. I just think we had a technical issue. I had to solve a problem with a what do you call it? Love your channel. Wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on ghosts and aliens? Okay, okay, yeah, you're the guy. Okay, first of all, thank you for loving the channel. Shout out to Sadie. What do I think about ghosts and aliens? Well, my thought process on ghosts and aliens has actually evolved pretty significantly, um, and no small credit to the channel. I think the first sort of understanding I had about ghosts in particular, I think ghosts and aliens are in separate categories, was that they weren't real. And if anybody had seen a ghost, then they were seeing a demon. So especially in the Old Testament, especially in the KJV, there's this thing called familiar spirits. And the idea is that in the unseen world, you have good guys. We call them angels, and I'm oversimplifying this. You have good guys, you have angels who work for God, and then you have demons who work for the devil, right? And familiar spirits are are bad intelligences, demons who impersonate your dead uncle or whatever, and pretend he's a ghost in order to deceive you. Okay, so that's a familiar spirit, and the idea is there's a specific passage in Hebrews that states it's appointed unto man once to die, and then after this the judgment. And so there's a theological problem with saying that ghosts can exist because that would seem to contradict what Hebrews says. So that's one. What do I think about ghosts today? What I think about ghosts is actually pretty interesting. The world, unseen world. Here's something that's really strange to me about the Christianity that I was taught growing up. On the unseen world is this very simplistic world. Good guys are angels, and then they work for God. As I said, bad guys are demons, and they work for the devil, and that's it. It's a very, very simple world. When you come into our world and our realm, and we are an order of creation that's beneath those two. In any theological school, that's just a fact that we're beneath them as far as complexity, majesty, glory, whatever. I think Psalm 8 and Hebrews 4 says that God made us, that was mankind, for a little while lower than the angels. But we are so much more complex than that. There's so much nuance to us as human beings and creatures, etc., etc. Nobody ever does anything for one reason. There are all these different layers to human consciousness, and so this idea that everything is just so simplistic in that world is kind of mysterious to me. And then when you read Thomas Aquinas and the orders of angels that he has, they're very complex. Some people would say convoluted, confusing, but so what do I think about ghosts now? Well, I have a couple theories. One is I do think that the familiar spirit thing is still in play to a degree. What I was not taught what I was not taught is that there are actually good guy familiar spirits, especially around the time period of Jesus and the apostles. There was this idea that your angel, your guardian angel who was assigned to you, could take on your form, basically, and then inform the people around you that you were okay on the other side, basically. Or the angel would show up. The angel who was protecting your friend Johnny would show up, and if you needed some guidance, he would take on the image of Johnny because Johnny was familiar to you, and so you would take your cues from him. And again, during the intertestamental period, that is the time between the Old and New Testament, those were good guys. The good angels were doing that. Okay, so when I grew up, all I heard was familiar spirits. If you see a ghost, it's a bad angel, it's a demon, stay away from it. And I was not told this until I started doing my own independent research, obviously, and then after that, obviously my opinion changed. So here's specifically what I'm talking about. There's this very strange story in the New Testament. And it's found in Acts chapter, and it's one of the reasons, by the way, this story is actually one of the reasons why I'm such a believer, particularly in the veracity of the New Testament. It's in Acts chapter 12. So here's what's happening. Peter gets in trouble with the religious authority because he's teaching Jesus. And the religious authorities do not like that Jesus is being taught, because Jesus comes with a message of equality and liberation, and their very complex theological system where you had to go to them to get God forgiveness is completely destroyed. And so the religious elite cannot stand that happening. And so they conspire with the Roman government. Peter gets thrown in jail. And prior to Peter being thrown in jail in Acts chapter 7, Stephen had been stoned. And then later on, another, bigwig in the church, James, had been beheaded. And so it looks like Peter was next. As a matter of fact, the text says when Herod saw how pleased the religious authorities were that James was beheaded, he locked up Peter, and he intended to do the same thing to Peter. Well, and so the church is praying for Peter, saying, God, please let Peter out of jail. We just lost two of our really big homies. We can't afford to lose another one. God responds, Peter escapes from jail, right? So then Peter knocks on so they're in this prayer meeting. Peter knocks on the door, and check this out. It's really a pretty fascinating discussion. So Peter gets out. And when he realized that, he goes to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose other name was Mark, where many were gathered together, and they were praying. So they're at this prayer meeting. Recognizing Peter's voice in her joy, she did not open the gate, but ran in and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. So she's like, this is great, guys. Allahu Akbar. Our prayer was answered. Peter got liberated from this prison. They said to her, you're out of your mind. But she kept insisting that it was so, and they kept saying, it is his angel. You see that right there? Verse 15, it is his angel. So what they were saying is, no, Mary, that's not Peter. He's in jail. We're praying to God to let him out, but we're not praying with a lot of faith. This is what I'm saying. Like, this seems to be as reported. Okay, that the people are constantly being portrayed as people who doubt God, and they're praying, but they're not praying with a lot of faith, and they're not saying, yes, God's going to come through for us. When God does come through for them, they don't believe it. And I've seen that actually happen. I've seen very miraculous things happen with people, and I prayed my heart out for it. And then when it happened, I didn't believe that it happened. It took me a very, very long time to even come to grips with the fact that this miraculous thing had occurred. So right there it says, it is his angel. Okay. So what that means is that the early church at least adopted the Jewish understanding that, yes, you did have familiar spirits that worked for the bad team, that they would study your buddy Sue, and they would act as if they were your buddy Sue, to deceive you and get you on the wrong path. But conversely, there were also good angels who were assigned to your buddy Peter or John, and oftentimes those angels would appear to you in the form of your buddy John, for whatever reason. And so the control that I use to say, okay, well, what are you dealing with? I would say is, does the Spirit lead you to dwell on them? Does the angel compel you to dwell on them, and are you focused on the angel, or does the experience catapult you to a deeper relationship with God, specifically God as expressed in Jesus Christ? And obviously I'm a Christian, so if the divine being gets you closer to Christ to the point where you forget about that divine being and you're so focused on Christ, then I would say it was a good angel. If the divine being gets you all caught up in having more mystical experiences, but you're not actually engaging and interfacing with Christ, then I would say that it's on the bad team. So that's how to answer the question about ghosts. Aliens. John Paul II basically said, what we believe are aliens are probably not what, or what we call angels, what we think of angels, because most of us, when we talk about angels, we are referencing medieval and Renaissance paintings of these very giant six-pack having people with wings or cherubs or whatever, right? We're not actually talking about the beings that are described as angels or seraphim or cherubim in the Old and New Testament. The medieval period did not have many pictures depicting those kinds of beings because, quite frankly, they're indescribable. One has a head like an ox, the other has a head like a man, and the thing's got four heads and all the rest of it. If you read Ezekiel chapter 1, Ezekiel chapter 1 is very, very interesting because it kind of reads like one of these, there's Ernie, or aliens or demons. I don't know that all aliens are demons. I don't know that, and I don't know how you can come up with a biblical statement that says that. But let me read something to you guys, and then do with it what you will. But it's very, very interesting. So here's Ezekiel. He's got this very interesting vision here. He said, I looked, and behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness, around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. So he's sitting there chilling, and then all of a sudden he's got this vision of a stormy wind coming out of the sky, a great cloud around it with brightness, and fire flashing continuously all around and gleaming metal. And in the midst of it came the likeness, of four living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness. So they looked humanoid, but each had four faces, and each of them had four wings. Their legs were straight. He goes on to describe what these beings look like. And then it says, whenever the spirit would go, they went without turning as they went. For the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches is moving to or fro among the living creatures. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures darted to and fro like the appearance of a flash of lightning. And then as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the earth beside the living creatures, one for each of the four of them. So each of them have this kind of wheel that they're traveling in. When they went in any of their four directions without turning as they went. And the rims were tall and awesome, and the rims of all were full of eyes all around. Now, if these were mini little lights, he's going to describe them as eyes. Do what you will with that. Wherever the spirit wanted to go, they went, and the wheels rose along with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. And I would say that means that the vehicle is actually being guided by thought or by will. Look, He looks up, he sees this giant thing, and it's mechanistic. He talks about rims, he talks about wheels, he talks about wheels going within wheels. He talks about humanoid creatures that are kind of humanoid, but don't really look completely human. And they have the likeness of animals on the earth and all the rest of it, but not exactly. We make assumptions about what angels were. We make assumptions that they can kind of float around and that they don't need vehicles to travel in. I don't know. What I would say about aliens is, one, I don't know, but two, do I believe that they exist? Well, there's a couple things. One, the universe is so vast and large that to me it's almost impossible to say that there couldn't be other life in our universe. I just think that that's crazy. So a simplistic answer would be, yeah, this is just an advanced civilization that's coming to check up on us or whatever. But another answer would be that, look, a lot of what we're seeing are defying the laws of physics. So you've got these vehicles. I don't know how into this stuff you are, but the TikTok spacecraft, with David Fravor, this guy's a United States Air Force guy, and I'm not going to say that the guy's lying because it causes me theological problems. He was saying that he observed a craft that was making these ridiculous sharp 90-degree movements that completely defy the laws of physics. It's transmedium, meaning that it operates in water and in the air at the same speed without any sort of drop off in velocity. All these kinds of things are beyond our ability to comprehend. But nobody's actually been able to make physical contact with these things. These things appear to want to be seen. They're in the sky. I mean, there's some of the stuff is chilling, man. Like that one where the air traffic controller was talking to a plane. He's like, "Listen, I'm seeing a craft. Like it's trailing me. It's following me the entire time." Is anybody else picking up on? I mean, a lot of this stuff from very credentialed, experienced people, and I'm sorry, I can't just dash all that away and say all those people are crazy. I do think they're seeing something, but what I'm saying is what we think of as angels and things of that nature. If you were to make a computer graphic version of what Ezekiel saw, where you've got a big storm cloud, it's very loud, there's fire everywhere, it's flashing everywhere, the thing is surrounded by lights or eyes, and then humanoid beings exit the vehicle. I mean, he is going into extreme detail when he's talking about this machine. And he uses terms like rims and things of that nature. I'm sorry. I know a lot of Christians want to spiritualize that away. But it appears to it doesn't sound any different to me. That it doesn't really sound any different to me than what I've heard modern people talk about. So that's a very, very long, drawn out answer. But long story short, I believe that what we're seeing when we're seeing ghosts, and the other thing is that there are times when God makes exceptions, as we saw with Samuel and the Witch of Endor, where Saul calls up the spirit of Samuel, and Samuel is disgruntled and says, "Why did you call me?" And notice he says, "Why did you bring me up?" He was in the world of the dead, and Samuel was a good guy. He says, "Why did you bring me up?" And it appears, by all accounts, that it was actually Samuel. So there are times that God can make an exception. Or it's a familiar spirit, which is a bad demon, or it's an angel who is a good angel who is familiar with the person and takes on the form of that person to deliver a message and bring somebody closer to Christ. Okay, so that's as far as aliens go. I believe it could be dimensions crossing into each other, other beings from other places in the universe, because I think it's impossible to say that there are no other life forms in the world, and it could be angelic activity, no different from the angelic activity that you see referenced in Ezekiel 1. if they're angels and they're of a higher order than us, which the scripture says, then that would mean they're intellectually superior to us, which would mean that they could be, the equivalent of a billion or whatever million years ahead of us, technologically speaking, and could craft ships that are able to do interplanetary travel. We do not know what angelic bodies are constituted of. The Bible uses this placeholder term called spirit, but none of us really knows what a spirit body is. And at some level, at least in Ezekiel 1, we see evidence that at some level they need to travel, or that they use traveling as an option with these machines. And so there you go. That's how to answer that question. I love that Vin's answers are always short and to the point. The pilot locked onto the Tic Tac UFO and it immediately jammed all their radar equipment and went like 9 times the speed of sound to get away. Yeah, I mean, it did a lot of really ridiculous stuff. And again, these are credentialed. I've seen people try to debunk these people. There's one guy on YouTube that's trying to debunk and the guy, I mean, doesn't even have the credentials to even begin to interact with what this guy's talking about. So I understand it sounds wacky. I have a very hard time. I have an extremely hard time dismissing all these professionals who've been in the air their entire life, longer than I've been alive. I have a very hard time just dismissing it because it sounds strange and all the rest of it. So, did Abraham... okay, so let me scroll up real quick, John, because I want to answer your question. Yeah, John, you can ask whatever you want. So let me scroll up to see if I missed any questions. I know my buddy Kai's in here. Shout out to Wayne. Do you guys not like Ice 9 Kills? No, I like Ice 9 Kills. I thought it was pretty cool. Do you watch the show Dexter? No, I do not. Okay. Hey, Kai, you sent Sori an email about the DJ stream. Okay, when she wakes up, I'll check it. Neil Murray in the house. I'm guessing you haven't gone to bed yet. Good guess. Okay. Hey, Vin, how you doing, brother? Good to see you, Joe. I'm doing pretty good. Do I think aliens are demons? I think some of them are demons, and I think some of them are good guys. Ghosts are just either souls who are caught in between. Okay. Anti-Mode's Beast, hey, big fan anyway. Hope you're doing well. Yeah. Hope you're doing good too. Is Sori snoring too loud? No comment. She's enjoying her rest. That's funny. So Peter had a fetch. I'm assuming a fetch is like a good angel that mimics him. Probably, if that's what you mean, yes. Mr. Chump says, insanity, believing in nonsense like religion. Well, welcome, Mr. Chumps. It's good to see you. Let's see. Hey, the Wackator. Were there demons at the Astroworld concert? I do not believe that the Astroworld concert had more demonic activity than normal. I don't think that we need to go to supernaturalism to explain what happened at the Astroworld concert. A lot of that, any more than you would have to have supernatural explanations for what happened at Woodstock, in Woodstock 99, where you had a summer festival where bottled water was $15 a bottle, where you had this rampant capitalism and you had no security and girls were getting assaulted in the middle of these giant mosh pits and there were no bathrooms and things like that. It was just a matter of time before people went crazy and did crazy stuff. So I don't think we need to have supernatural explanations from that. A lot of that is, Woodstock was a combination of human greed, bad planning, and toxic masculinity run amok. And I think Astroworld, unfortunately, was probably a species of that. I purposely stayed away from the details of that situation just because I made a commitment to myself at the end of 2020 to really make sure that in 2021 I was protecting my mental health. And when I hear stories like that, I tend to obsess over them. I dig into the details, and I'm wrecked for weeks on end because I think about the parents. I think about my own kids. I think about what would happen, and especially with the Astroworld thing. My brother actually is on assignment in Houston right now, and his kid wanted to go. His kid actually bought tickets to go, and my brother said, "No, you can't go." And so I purposely stayed away from a lot of that stuff. That's why I didn't do any Middle America episodes on Kyle Rittenhouse. I didn't do a lot of the crazy stuff that happened in 2021. That would have been great for my Middle America channel. I completely just skipped over. I didn't look at the Ahmaud Arbery case, all the rest of it. So my point is, I don't know enough about the Astroworld situation to speak intelligently to it, but I would assume that you don't need demonic or supernatural explanation. Human beings can wreak enough havoc by our own damn selves without that. For the ancient Finns, there was no real barrier that separated the living from the dead. Even after death, the dead were in contact with the living, receiving their offspring and hearing their prayers. The family was thought of as a single whole, consisting of living and deceased members. The ancestors were the upholders of the family's moral values, traditional ways, and societal structure. That's interesting. Yeah, I was just talking to Soraya yesterday, actually, when in the Old Testament, when you died, many times it would say you were gathered with your fathers, and that was a euphemism for death in the Old Testament. So, very, very interesting. Very interesting. Hey, Mark Buckle. Hey, we have got to catch up, man. We have got to catch up for show. Did Abraham have a choice not to tell a lie? I'm assuming this is with Abimelech, where he said that Sarah was his sister. Yeah, when he was in Egypt and he said Sarah was his sister. Yeah, absolutely. He had a choice, and he chose wrongly. And he was willing to sell out his wife to save his own skin. Which look, man, in the ancient Near East, when moral tales would be told, the hero was almost always a perfect Christ figure. And so for Genesis to consistently assassinate the character of the hero, whether it's Noah or Abraham or Isaac or Jacob, that's one of the reasons I believe it. Go and find another ancient Near Eastern document where the central figure, the central hero, has these many horrifically bad, cowardly character flaws. Cowardice among men in the ancient Near East was looked upon as one of the worst character traits that you could have. That they operated in a shame-honor milieu, so shame was actually a fate worse than death. And to give your wife over to somebody else to sleep with because you were afraid was the ultimate in shame. I mean, to this day in the Middle East, many men cannot deal with the fact of their wife even being sexually assaulted or their daughter being sexually assaulted, much less giving them to be sexually assaulted. That's where the honor killings came from. The honor killings didn't come from Islam. The honor killings came from the shame honor culture. And so in order to restore the dignity of the household and the dignity of the male of the patrilineage in that household, that girl's got to die. So for Abraham to do that is an extremely shameful thing to do in the ancient Near Eastern context. And it's one of the reasons I believe the Bible, because he is the guy that booted up the whole thing, and he doesn't look good. That's why in Islamic retellings of the Old Testament, all the shameful, sinful acts that the patriarchs and the Bible heroes do, all of those get erased. All their misdeeds get erased and retold to make the men look better than what they actually were. And so, Yeah, he absolutely did have a choice, but he acted like a coward. And what's interesting is cowardice runs the gamut all through that family. It plagues the family over and over and over again. Um, and so, yeah, he absolutely did have a choice, and he chose wrong. It's 5 in the morning. Go to bed. I will soon, inshallah. United with your father sounds so epic. I agree. I agree. Yeah, as long as the dignity of the patriarchy is restored. Yeah, and again, Abraham is not portrayed as a good guy for doing that. He's portrayed as a coward for doing that, and he actually gets rebuked by Abimelech, because what happens is Jesus shows up to defend Sarah, and he says, hey, you're a dead man. So Jesus appears to this guy in a vision in Genesis who's about to, whatever. And he says, you're a dead man. And the guy goes, what did I do? And he goes, you're about to, and the guy goes, hey, I did not know that she was married. And Jesus, or the angel, whoever you want to call him, says, well, okay, well, send her back and don't touch her. If you touch her, I'll murder your entire your entire city. But send her back, don't touch her. And then, and so Abimelech the next day goes up to Abraham and goes, you lying bastard, you almost got us all killed. What the hell's wrong with you? And there's actually a really cool moment actually in Genesis where Abimelech does something really, really good. And this is one of those things where I'm like, here we go, ancient Near East, find me another story like this in the ancient Near East, please. Because it's an unbelievable story. Unbelievable story. Okay, so if you guys don't know what's going on, so Abraham goes and he's on these travels with his wife, and he tells his wife, look, you're very, very beautiful, and if if they know that you and I are married, they're just going to kill me and take you. So tell everybody that you're my sister. So she goes and says, okay, you're my sister. Well, of course she's beautiful. So what ends up happening is the king takes this woman, okay, for himself. And the angel of the Lord, it says, shows up and says, you're a dead man, to the guy. He says, I'm about to murder you, bro. And so Abimelech says, hey, man, I had nothing to do with this, bro. I had nothing to do with this. This guy told me that this girl was his wife, yada, yada, yada. So here's what happens at the end of the narrative. It's unbelievable. Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male servants and female servants and gave them to Abraham and returned Sarah to his wife to him. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before you, dwell wherever it pleases you. And to Sarah he said, behold, I give your brother, okay, 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. God did not tell Abimelech to do this. But Abimelech understands that the way that Sarah was treated was unjust, and it degraded her value. And so what he did is to say, I want to vindicate you between my people, and I want to vindicate you in front of your own people. You were innocent in this affair. It's your son of a bitch husband who fucked everything up, but you're clean and you should be honored. I wish people in the ancient in the current Middle East would apply these kinds of rules to women who are sexually vulnerable, because now what's happening is the way that they deal with the he is worried about her honor. But currently in the Middle East, and really throughout all male history, to be honest with you, it's always female sexuality and female sexual vulnerability has never been about the bodily autonomy of the woman or the honor of the woman. It's always been about what it makes the man look like. It makes the man look bad. It makes the father look bad, etc., etc. But Abimelech's concern here, and he's obviously portrayed as a good guy, Abimelech's concern is Sarah's own honor. So the angel shows up and fights for Sarah's bodily autonomy because her husband's too much of a coward to do it. So that's taken care of on that side. But as far as her honor goes, which is paramount in the ancient world, Abimelech goes out of a way to publicly say your honor is intact. You're great, and think about how progressive that is in an ancient Near Eastern document. I think that's amazing. That's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. What's the difference between the concept of judgment day and the biblical phrase after death comes judgment? That would be two different things in God's timeline. Very good question. Shout out to Perkinos. Well, let's say it this way, right? If you shoot somebody in the United States of America, the police are going to say you're under arrest, right? They're going to go to your house. They have a search warrant. They find the gun in your house, right? And that's the murder weapon. They're going to say you're under arrest, and they lock you up, and they put you in jail, and then they tell you, okay, we've got you here. Your trial is, July 4th, 2023, right? There's a sense in which you being dragged out of your house, arrested, and then incarcerated, that is a form of judgment, right? But your ultimate judgment is not going to come until the trial and the evidence and all the rest of it. And then at the trial, after all the deeds and everything are weighed and you're found guilty beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt, then the judge says you're going to get 25 to life or you're going to get the death penalty. And so when Hebrews says it's appointed a man wants to die and after that the judgment, I believe it's talking about that jail incarceration. We're taking you away. We're going to put you in a holding tank with a bunch of bad people. And then when it talks in Revelation 21 about the final judgment, there was this great white throne. And then, the deeds are opened in the book and you're judged according to the deeds. And everybody's name who's not found in the book of life gets thrown in the lake of fire. That's your ultimate judgment. That's when the judge sentences you. It's like the Armin Arbery trial where these guys, chase homeboy down, killed him. They were in jail, right? They were incarcerated, and that itself is a judgment. Anybody who's ever been incarcerated will tell you that. But then they did not get imprisoned. They didn't get their final sentence until, a couple days ago. So I'd say that's how those two work. Yeah, I'm not really commenting on the Kyle Rittenhouse thing. You know how I feel about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. But it's also good to see you, by the way, Benji. Out of curiosity, do you think Jesus had to be taught not to steal the Lego, or was it spiritually impossible for him to do so? Yeah, I think it was impossible for him to do so. One of my favorite lines in the New Testament is in the Upper Room Discourse. And the Upper Room Discourse is that part in the here we go. I like the literal Bible verse on this. So Judas has gone off to betray everybody, and Jesus says, "Look, guys, I'm about to die here." And this is the way that Jesus phrased it. He says, "No longer will I speak much with you, for the ruler of this world comes," that's the devil, "and in me he has nothing." In me he has nothing. What that means is, Jesus is saying, I'm about to face my greatest temptation, which is the temptation, get out of here, man. You don't want to go to the cross with these people. These are horrible, terrible people. Screw these people, bro. You're going to have to die for Vin. You don't want to die for Vin, right? And so he's about to face his greatest temptation. So Jesus says, in me he has nothing. It's one of my favorite lines in the entire Bible. There was nothing inside of Jesus that Satan could jump on. There's a lot of things in me. There's a lot of things in you. There's a lot of things in Orion that Satan can kind of latch onto and have a foothold in, right? But he had nothing like that in Jesus. And so, no, Jesus was never tempted to steal the Lego. He never had to be taught to take, to share. He was never stained with original sin. Good question. Later, Sadie. Just saying you can shoot people and not get judged in the legal sense. Okay, I got you. 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 You're right about that. Thanks for the answer. That gives me some clarity, and I have something to think about. Scriptures, pondering literature gives me rest and calms the storm. Amen. Amen. Me too. For sure, for sure, for sure. Let me see. Did I miss any questions? Oh, here we go. Why would the God of truth pick a person that is okay with a lie, even worse, becoming filthy rich from it? Very, very good question. And here's how to answer that question. Because that is the only kind of people that God has to work with. One of the big themes in our household for the last year and a half has been this concept of grace. Okay? So mercy is kind of God not giving you what you deserve, right? Like you drove a 75 in a 25 and you get pulled over by the police, and the police says, okay, you should have a $150 ticket, but you know what? I'm going to waive the ticket. That's a form of mercy. Grace is in that same rubric, but it's worse. It's you drive 75 in a 25, you get pulled over, and not only does the officer rip up your ticket, but he says, you know what? Here's the keys to a brand new Lamborghini. And that's what God does with us over and over and over again. That's what he does in my life. And it's what I've been pounding into my family for the last year and a half, is that we only stand by God's grace. And so the reason that God selects a guy like Abraham, and Abraham is revered, I mean, to this day, even secularists, I mean, it's called, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity are called Abrahamic religions, right? And yet the guy that gets, and that's why I said that our Islamic friends cannot countenance the idea that Abraham was a sinner, and so all of those stories get deleted or retold in the Quran. But I love that Abraham is revealed warts and all one, because it gives me a lot of confidence in the veracity of the story, whether you consider Abraham to be a literal physical human being, or whether you consider Abraham to be a composite of a group of people, whatever. I don't care how you look at it. The guy that was sort of like one of the pillars in my religion was a horrible dude, was a coward. There are other guys in my religion like David who were very violent individuals who didn't have very much self-control. And what that tells us is that if we're going to have a relationship with God, it cannot be based on my goodness and my merits. And let me tell you why that's the best news in the world. If God set up a really awesome person who was the pinnacle of morality and said, all right, now be like him and you're in, then religious leaders would be able to hold that over you for the rest of your life. They would be able to say, because here's the thing, how good do you have to be? So for example, let's say that you're not like Abraham and you don't have a problem with lying. I assume that if you're honest with yourself, you're going to say you have a problem with something, whether it's thievery, jealousy, whether it's whatever, right? So if I were in a relationship with you and I had sort of spiritual authority over you, I'd say, look, man, you're a real jealous individual, and you know what the Bible says about jealousy. So look, here's the deal. I'm going to tell you to do all these religious tasks to make up for your jealousy, and I'm going to hold that over your head. And when will you ever know that you're good enough? You can never know that you're good enough. You'll be on a treadmill for the rest of your life trying to make up for your faults, which I got to say is 99% of religions in the world. And one of the things I think is probably the biggest misconception about Christianity is that you're doing all these good things because you're trying to go to heaven and avoid hell. I haven't done a single thing in my life because I'm trying to go to heaven or avoid hell. What I'm doing is I'm reacting to God being overly gracious with me. I'm reacting to God being too good to me. In other words, one way that you can change somebody's behavior is to threaten them and tell them they're horrible and they're this and that. Another way to change somebody's behavior is to be so gracious with them that it breaks their heart to harm you. So, for example, if that happened, right? Like, let's say neighborhood kids are playing baseball, and the baseball comes crashing, careening through my window and cracks the window, right? Here's an example. The Sandlot. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, The Sandlot. These kids, they play baseball, and it was this great summer. They're playing baseball together. And then one of the kids, and then there's this guy, James Earl Jones. He lives in this house. He's a very mean, horrible, terrible guy. Very horrible guy. They think. The kid hits a home run. The thing goes through the guy's window, and now these kids have to figure out, shit, how we're going to get in there, right? So they get in there because the guy is supposedly blind. James Earl Jones is supposedly blind. They get in there. They get in the house. And turns out that the guy played with Babe Ruth or whatever. All these baseball legends. So the guy's sitting there schooling them, right? And he's got this ball signed by all these baseball legends. So when these kids turn around to leave, the guy says, hey, you forgot your ball. And he tosses them the ball signed by all these baseball greats. Okay, here's a question. If that guy showed up, let's say a week later, and says, hey, my lawn is kind of looking kind of frazzy. Would any of you kids, like, pray tell, if you have spare time, mow this lawn? Who wouldn't mow that lawn? See what I'm saying? I believe that Jesus bought the entire universe for me and gave it to me. I believe that with I believe in a very, very short time, me and Sori and my family and a lot of you guys, inshallah, will be running through this universe and meeting other beings and all that, and we're going to be at the top of the food chain because of what Jesus done. And Jesus has been overly gracious with me. And so because of that, that's one of the things that was at play when I bought that kid that guitar. And it was crazy because this is a backstory. Me and Sori were in the store, and immediately I was like, man, I wish I could buy that kid some picks for his guitar. I was talking to Jesus. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to buy him some picks for the guitar. And as I'm talking to Jesus, Sori's next to me having the exact same conversation. And so when the kid left and she said, we should buy the kid the guitar, it happened immediately. And so one way to change behavior, like I said, is to threaten people. And sure, there's threats in the Bible, all the rest of it. That's one way to change somebody's behavior. But fear does not last as long as gratitude does, right? Fear only stays with you when you're in the realm of danger. So fear will get you to stop doing something bad, but it will not get you to consistently do something good. But gratitude will. And after we gave the kid the guitar, it was really, really emotional. I didn't film this part, but me and her were jumping around, and we both had our individual moments with God. And then one of my favorite Bible passages of all time popped into my head where it says, the love of Christ compels us. The line in the Exorcist, the something of the power of Christ compels you. That's actually not a quote from the Bible. The compulsory force actually in the heart of a Christian is the love of Christ. So Paul says, the love of Christ compels us because we're convinced that one died for all and therefore all died. So we died with him. And he died for all so that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them. And I go, okay. If you're going to die for me, not only overlook my sins, but give me a Ferrari. If you tell me to buy a guitar for that kid, I'm doing that shit like immediately, bro. Forever. And so that's one of the reasons why God uses a horrible guy like Abraham to kickstart the religion, because he said whatever your issue is. Abraham was lying, David was violence, Vin was violence. Sori was, I'm not going to speak on her stuff, but whatever it is, God will overlook it, and he will give you the entire world, and he will do great things through you. But I didn't give that kid the guitar to make up for anything. It was just an overflow of gratitude, man. It was the love that God poured into me just overflowed and spilled out over on that kid. And so that's what happened. So it's not, you're not doing it to make up for anything, and you're not doing anything to cancel anything out. You're just doing it because it just overflowed over you, and you can't help but do it. The love of Christ compels us. And I've experienced that so many times when I literally could not have done anything else. We could not have done anything else in that moment because Christ was there and he was asking us, hey man, can you do something for this kid? And it's immediate. I die for him. So that's why God uses terrible people. So good point. Good question. JLB, my man. The reason people hate me is that I'm too good. I don't think people hate you. I don't think people hate you, bro. James Orway killed MLK. Right. Bad guy. You're right. The fact that there's a 14-year-old doing an adult's labor is not heartwarming. The story shows how terrible our system actually is. I don't completely disagree with you, Benji. I don't completely disagree with you. But who knows what's going to happen? You know, God had us give that kid the guitar for a reason. So maybe you know, he's going to be a big rock star and get his entire family and create a bunch of generational wealth for his timeline and be okay. And all of us had a part in that. You know what I'm saying? Because you know, that's a possibility, bro. So you can look at the bad angle of the kid having to do all that work. You can look at it that way, or you can look at it like we got to interface with this kid at a very important time in his story, and maybe some good's gonna come from it. You never know. Let me see. Vin, is this one of those late streams you relentlessly talk about trying out? Yes, that it is. Yes, it is. I'm about to land the plane if there aren't any more questions, but yes, it is. David talks about his enemies devouring him in Psalm 27-ish. Poetic interpretation aside, could it be that Enoch pulled his theology about giants eating people from knowing the David and Goliath story? It's possible. It's also possible that there could have been an oral history of giants eating people. We know that there are certain tribes and such that are like literally cannibalistic. So it's not impossible to surmise that they could have done that. These were the mighty men of old, as Genesis 6 said. So how big or gigantic you thought we think they are, it's really, you know, inconsequential in that they're obviously physically imposing characters. And there's a lot of, I was actually listening to this guy named David, I forgot his last name. He was doing this missions conference called Purpose Driven Death. And one of the things that would happen is that these warring, he would go to these uncharted tribes where Christians were not welcome, these unreached people groups. And one of the things that he talked about was that these tribes, they would eat one another, and they believed, check this out, they believed if they ingested the flesh and blood of their enemies, that they would be able to absorb their life force, and it would make them stronger, kind of like the Highlander type of thing. And it was very fascinating because obviously Jesus in John chapter 6 says, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you. And so these missionaries were able to go to them and said, well, you got the idea right, but you're eating and drinking the wrong person. And they explained to them about the gospel and communion and all this and that. And it worked. And so this cannibalistic, very, very ironic, especially if you know anything about the early church. So it's possible about the David and Goliath thing. It's possible that these mighty men, whether they were 6 feet tall or 8 to 12 feet tall, it's very possible that they had some ideology that if they ate their victims, it would give them more power or whatever. What have you been playing on guitar lately? Hey, Randy. What I've been playing on guitar lately is a couple of originals. Sori and I were kind of doodling around. It was our first jam session. Sori doesn't know what it's like to be in a band. And so I was just playing something on loop a little bit, and it was so beautiful. And I'm like, oh my God, like when we really, really get this stuff together, I'm going to be pretty proud of what we have put together, because I always say, like, I want to make music that I like, that I would listen to. like the Quiet Storm beat. I always felt like the Quiet Storm beat was like the greatest beat of all time, or one of them, and that the subject matter and the lyrics wasn't deep enough. And so when we did it, the Breathe version that we did, I'm like, yes. And it sounds completely egomaniacal, but it is what it is. So that's what I've been playing. For sure. What you haven't sucked ingested life for? There are Greek myths of cannibalistic giants. In Norse mythology, the etymology of Jotun also implies hunger, possibly cannibalism. Yeah, if Kai's still around, then yeah. I know a lot of people hate their own music, but I don't. I don't hate my own music. We've got another song. We've got a rap song that's coming out. There's so many things. Like right now, I'm really, really focused on launching this Amazon product, which we're coming down the wire on pretty soon. So it's very possible that we're about to do that. And yeah, after this, guys, I'm gonna hit the gym, for show. But yeah, we got a lot of things coming. We just gotta focus, I put my lifetime in between the paper's lines. Yeah. And it's crazy. I wrote that song and Prodigy had just died. So it was crazy because, like, I got the beat and I got, like, the inspiration for, like, a couple of lines. And then, like, 2 days later, Prodigy died. So it was like, dang, it was like one of those things. But, yeah. For sure. Patiently waiting for the answers to my questions in my message on Patreon. Soraya does Patreon, so I'm not sure what those questions are, but yeah, I'll hit her up when she wakes up and make sure that she jumps on those immediately. For sure. All right, guys, 10 minutes. Ben says the heart's purpose is to pump blood. Well, Ben, I'm glad that you say the heart has a purpose, because that necessitates a purposer. So I'm glad that you're graduating to a more theistic understanding of the universe when you talk about the heart's purpose. And I agree with you. The heart's purpose is to pump blood. You're missing out on new Fear Factory stuff. I bet I am. We just did a one-off because somebody was like, "Yo, you got to listen to this stuff. You got to listen to this stuff for show." So I'm yawning. It's funny. Like, I yawn a lot, but like it's never like, "Oh, okay, this is a sign that you're going to sleep." I'm back from work and you didn't sleep yet. No, I have not slept yet. By the way, shout out to the big homie Tom Brady for getting to number 2 seed in the playoffs. I have no idea. How many of these I'm gonna do, but they're kind of fun. The vibe's a little bit different, so I think it's really, really cool. Have you ever gone through what I call panic prayer? It's like a somewhat nervous compulsion to pray about things that worry you. I need to fix that. I don't know if you need to fix that. That might be part of your spiritual gift, my man. If it gives you that urgency to pray, because a lot of us don't have much urgency to prayer. So Yeah. Purpose does not necessitate an eternal purposer. In fact, purposer isn't even a word, you idiot. Yeah, but I don't care. If you use the term purpose, that obviously implies intelligence and intentionality. So, you can go on pretending all you want, Benji, but purpose is a very, very specific word, and words have meaning, sir. Have you experienced sleep paralysis? It's scary as fuck. Yeah, I have. I have experienced sleep paralysis once in my life. I didn't experience like the bad guy, like the monster looking thing, which probably would have completely sent me over the edge. What I experienced was I used to love sleeping with the covers over my head. Actually, now I think about it, it was from that moment where I hated sleeping with covers over my head after that, actually. But I used to love sleeping with covers over my head. Me and my little brother, we used to do that a lot of times. We used to play Back to the Future. So like we would we would be in our regular time period, and then we'd go under the cover, and then we'd like jostle around, and then we'd stop, and then we'd take the covers off, and we were like in 1985 or we're in 2020 or whatever when we were kids. So anyway, I got the cover over my head, right? I got my eyes closed, and I'm thirsty. I got to go to the bathroom, whatever. And I'm like, all right. But I couldn't open my eyes. But I was completely awake. I don't even know if this counts as sleep paralysis. I don't know what this is. But I was completely awake, but I couldn't open my eyes. And initially I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And then it was like, dude, open your eyes. Open your eyes. And I couldn't open my eyes. And I became more and more panicked. And my body couldn't move. I couldn't move. And I couldn't even get my eyes to open. I summoned every power that I could think of to open my eyes. And I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move. I don't know how long I was in that situation, but I remember it pretty starkly. And I remember like finally being able to do it. And like taking a deep breath. But I didn't have any breathing problems, but it was kind of like I was underwater. But that was all like mental. But that's the first and only time that's ever really happened to me. But yeah, now that I think about it, ever since then, I've never been able to. I don't like the covers over my head. I don't like being. It probably gave me claustrophobia. Before that, I had no claustrophobia whatsoever. That was the closest I could come to sleep paralysis. I've heard other stories where people like were stuck in their bed and they see like some sort of being. And that freaks me the fuck out when I hear about that shit, man. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds horrible. I don't know what I would have done if I would have seen something and not been able to move. I don't even know if what I'm describing is sleep paralysis. Maybe it was just me being terrified. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. Dan Pogmore in the house. Hey, greetings from South Africa. Thanks for the great content you guys deliver on the channel. I appreciate you, Wendell. Thank you. Do words have meaning, though? Well, the very fact that you can ask me if words have meaning indicates that you believe it has meaning to some degree, right? Because otherwise, that question is unintelligible. Yes, it's stressful to feel panic prayer. Fits how I feel. I've only experienced sleep paralysis once. All I recall is I couldn't move, and I recall hearing these chattering voices around me. I just relaxed and went back to sleep. Yeah, Perk, you you be doing that. Oh, is that the Blessed Mother? That's nice, bro. I appreciate that. It does count because I think people experience it differently. Some can open their eyes and vice versa. Cool Back to the Future story, though. I've never had the sleep paralysis thing. Well, you're a lucky man. That is not something that you want to have, for sure. My question might sound stupid, sorry for that, but what's your take on paranormal activity from a Christian's perspective, ghost videos? It's not a what's up, Dan, my brother? No, it's not a stupid question. It's actually, we opened the show with that. I do believe in what people call ghosts. Long story short, there are bad guy spirits who can impersonate your lost loved ones or a lost loved one, and there are also good guy spirits who do the same thing from a biblical worldview. So, what I would say is, if the spirit leads you to Christ and gets you so entranced with Christ that you almost forget about the experience with the spirit, then it was a good one. If the spirit gets you completely focused on the spirit world and mysticism and all that at the expense of knowing Christ, then it was a bad one. If you want to have a more in-depth explanation, you can back up to earlier because it's the first question I answered. Did you see Alex Heckner's new video rating other reaction channels? He had you guys in it. No, I didn't, but I heard about it. And Alex Heckner is, like, in my opinion, one of the best in the business. In my opinion, I think he's the best. Just a lot of energy, and I know Alex offline, and he's a very, very genuine guy. Very genuine guy. And he treats I've seen him talk to regular, hang out with regular no-name people. And I've been in Zoom chats with him where he's with he's friends with some pretty big bands, and he's the same guy. Just unbelievable, beautiful, genuine, beautiful human being. Why is it that demonic possession and encounters seem to be more openly prevalent in Catholicism than Protestantism? Well, I think if you look at charismatic Protestantism, I don't really see a dichotomy, right? Like, there are some Protestant strains that are cessationists, don't believe in basically function like functional agnostic or atheists, don't believe in the spirit world at all. And if you have any sort of paranormal reactivity, they'll just send you to a mental institution and hop you up full of drugs. And so they'll say, we've never seen anything, supernatural happen. Whereas if you are in a Pentecostal church and you have any sort of mental malady, they immediately call it all demons. So I just think that it just depends on what a given church or group of people emphasizes how they're going to experience or not experience the supernatural. Do you agree with the idea that the bad spirits that do things like possess people are disembodied Nephilim? I don't think that can be said for 100% of quote-unquote possessions. For example, when Judas is about to go betray Jesus, it said Satan entered into him. This is probably another stream, but I've talked with people who, in their exercising, have dealt with monarchical spirits or principalities and powers, etc. And so it's what I said. I think the spirit world is just as or even more diverse than this world, right? And so you have, regular, nasty, rotten, serial killers, and then you have people like Pol Pot and Hitler and Stalin and Mussolini and Mengele and all the rest of these people. And I think the spirit world functions exactly that way. I think a lot of the possession stories that you see in the New Testament, particularly the Gospels, definitely you can make a strong case for Nephilim, particularly with their obsession to always be in a physicalized circumstance, because, as you would know, they were previously physicalized and then they lost that at the flood. So I think that is a lot of what can inhabit a person, but I do not think that that's the exclusive group of people that can inhabit a person. Good question. How are you doing, man? I am doing fairly well. I, had a very hard time over the holiday period with a certain somebody in our lives that gave us all COVID when I was supposed to reconnect with my dad. And this person is still not, she hasn't really budged as far as what kind of person she is. So that's always a stressor, and I presume will always be a stressor in my life. Thorn in the flesh type of thing. But at the same time, one of the things I've learned is that I never want my kids to feel any sort of pain. And it's I get extremely resentful because they love their mother, obviously, and so they always want to be in that situation. But at the same time, she's always hurting them, and hurting them deeply and significantly. And so it's a crazy balance that I have to put up. And but at the same time, like, the Lord's been showing me, like, look, man, they've got Sori, they've got you, they're in a circumstance where they're been able to thrive. My daughter just wrote an entire book. I mean, like 2,000, 3,000 word chapters and 15 chapters. Like, she just completed an entire book before her 15th birthday. My son is doing a lot of, like, they're able to thrive in ways that so many other kids aren't. And so it's a lot of it is just perspective and looking at the bright side of things. And it's hard seeing your kids in that circumstance. But at the same time, I'm just very, very grateful, because I know there are a lot of kids in those circumstances that do not, where the parents don't have the ability to be around them as much as we do. So that person is always, I'm never going to sit here and bullshit, but that person's always going to be a thorn in my side. It's been really crazy to watch Soraya, really, because when you're in the middle of it, you're handling it by yourself. Because I didn't tell anybody for most of the time when things were really happening, when we were actually together. Because I wanted to protect her reputation, because I was in a church context. It's crazy. I feel a lot safer talking, venting about her in this context than around the local church context. Something about the mental community where, like, you guys would be like, yeah, that sucks. But nobody's going to be like, oh, that horrible, terrible, selfish, horrible, yada, 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 yada. Because I think the mental community understands mental illness in a way that other people don't. And there's a lot less judgment or whatever. So thank you guys for that, by the way, not completely judging that person. But, so yeah, she's always going to be a problem. But this is the first time in my life where I've been able to vent when something happens. I've never been able to do that in my life with her. So you guys have been a real blessing with that. So, yeah, I mean, it's still horrible. It's still terrible. I wish the kids would come to me and say they never want to see her again, just so I don't have to see them, going in the back and forth. But at the same time, they've got us. They've got their endeavors that they're being supported on, that no kid their age is being supported to the degree that they are. And I've got a community where when things get really difficult, I can ventilate, or I can, to a group, or I can go one-on-one with, I'm not going to name names, but there's people in here that are going through damn near the exact same thing across the world. That I know is happening to them one-on-one. And so I can have those one-on-one conversations with a person that I know that knows what it's like. And then I can also reach out to Perk and say, hey, man, say a prayer for me here. This has been a couple times I've reached out and texted Perk and be like, yo, man, I need you to pray about this. So all in all, I mean, I have to say, I'm doing really, really good. And I think one of the things that really helped me was I really made a commitment to protecting my mental health in 2021. So there were a lot of stories I just didn't look at. There were a lot of stressors and a lot of things I just did not look at in 2021 and didn't report on. And people ask me about it, and I say, I don't know, because I'm not looking at it. And so I think that was wise. And that's probably one of the reasons why I'm in a much more balanced and grounded state of mind. And I'd commend that to a lot of you guys, man. Like, the shit that's happening in the world right now is absolutely crazy. Don't spend too much time imbibing all that stuff. It'll kill you. Vin, can I ask a religious question? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Vin, have you ever listened to Audrey and Fern's interviews with Heiser? They propose that possession is not Nephilim, but your mind fighting past traumas being manipulated by principalities. Yeah, XBM. That's actually, I didn't think that people would know, but yeah, I've had discussions with folks that you named. So yeah, those deities, now that paganism is no longer prevalent, might even be more nasty. I agree. I have three. I think some could be Nephilim, some the rulers and principalities. It's important to remember that the ancients thought that there were many gods of cities, towns, forests, and households. I agree with that. I don't think I've listened to enough Dark Funeral to have an opinion about them yet. Good catching up with you, Vin. Have a blessed day. Yeah, same to you, bro. Vin, what if a demonic spirit accidentally converts someone by affirming a prior belief? Does that mean they are good or incompetent? It means they're incompetent. The forces of evil are that's one of the things that's really fascinating. Eminently incompetent. I mean, Paul says that if they would have known what the plan was, they wouldn't have crucified the Lord of glory. So, there you go. That shows you everything that you need to know. Okay, Akuma, I'm waiting. I don't think it's going to take a full week, Neil. I don't know what the schedule looks like, but I'm pretty sure we're playing Fortnite a couple days ago, and she brought that up. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right, guys, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I truly believe if we all stopped watching the news, the world would improve. I mean, yeah. I mean, it really improved my mental state last year, and I'm not sure if I'm ever going to go back to looking at the news, especially bad news, to the degree that I did prior to that. It just was not healthy for me. I'm not saying it's not healthy for everybody. I'm just saying it wasn't healthy for me. Okay, my question is, heaven should be perfect and where we all go to live in peace and be with the Lord. My question is, if heaven is perfect, how did Lucifer sin against God there? Good question. Good question. I think that you have to think about heaven, what we call heaven, in two different forms or two different mediums. One would be the quote-unquote physical place where God is. And, you know, the Hebrew word for heaven, what we see as heaven in your Bible, it's shemayim. And it's heavens, plural, right? So traditionally you have the first heaven where, you know, you have the first, second, and third heaven. So the first heaven is like the sky that you can see phenomenologically, and the second would be like where the sun is in space or whatever, and then the third would be the realm where God lives. And so Revelation 12 says, and there was war in heaven. So the location of heaven or the abode of God isn't portrayed in Genesis through Revelation as this perfect place where there isn't any sin because of the location. It's not like, oh, this is a boundary of heaven. You know, like when you're driving, like there's a specific boundary where you cross from Maine to New Hampshire. Like, let's say that there's some boundary where you're going from the second to third heaven. It's not like once you cross that boundary in the biblical world that means everything is hunky-dory. That's not what makes the ideal heaven heaven. What makes the ideal heaven heaven at the end of Revelation is that evil gets banished away into another dimension, or the lake of fire, you can call it. I call the lake of fire another dimension that's away from our dimension. Do what you will with it. So, as if you're speaking about heaven, the location, yes, sin is possible there. But if you're talking about heaven, the ideal, heaven, the place where there is no death, mourning, crying, or pain or sin, that's something that has to happen once the evil actors get removed. And from all intents and purposes, it appears that Satan and other evil principalities, I mean, Satan is literally called the prince of the power of the air. Well, not Satan per se, but bad angels. There's a particular bad angel called the prince of the power of the air. And they still have access to that point, and they will until the final judgment is what I believe. I mean, if you think about it, the last judgment in Revelation 21 takes place in heaven, right? And so the ideal heaven where there isn't any sin happens after Revelation 21, and I don't believe we've gotten there yet. Somebody asked another question. Do you actually believe in Satan and demons and such? Catholics are ambiguous. Yes, I believe in a literal Satan and literal demons. The only thing I will say about Satan is I am not certain that Satan is like the most evil being in the universe. I'm not sure about that. He gets a lot of attention and he's very active, but I'm not certain that he's the most powerful. I just think that he's the most active, but I'm not sure that he's the most powerful. You've got beings that are in Tartarus and gloomy dungeons, and if you look at the Greek background to that, it's the Titans who are massively powerful and strong or whatever. They were so horrible that the gods had to just put them underground. So yeah, I believe in a literal Satan. I believe there's a singular personality that has set himself up against God and God's people for show. That's cool, Akuma. I'm probably the same guy. What does perfect mean in this context? Lucifer doing what would be in his nature and the bylaws interfered with his ability to do so. Doesn't that mean it was imperfect for him? Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it would be imperfect for him, but Lucifer or you or I are not the determiner of ultimate reality. God is. So if I'm looking at a system God has put in place and I say it's imperfect, the imperfection lies with me, not with him. And so that's the only sort of rational idea you can have if there's an actual true divine being with a capital D. But if you're going to be as insane as to think that you can improve upon God's design, then you end up killing a lot of people. Many people, including Vin, I got to know, are impressed by the impact of DMP to human mind. Is this mostly reported feeling about a universal consciousness, a thing that could go with Christianity? Ooh. I'm going to put that there so other people can read it. Here's what I'll say about DMT. So in the beginning, you have Adam and Eve, and they ingest something, some sort of fruit, right? They ingest something that increases their consciousness. When it says their eyes were opened, that's obviously a metaphorical way of talking about their consciousness was heightened, because we know that because it says that when Eve saw that the fruit was pleasing to the eye and good for food, so she already saw with her optical nerves what the apple was, right? Or what the fruit was. So when it says their eyes were opened, obviously it's talking about a heightened form of consciousness, where they were able to see the world in a way that they didn't see before, even though they were looking in the same place. So Adam and Eve had always looked at each other, presumably. But now they ingest this thing and their consciousness is heightened such that they looked at the exact same thing and they came to a higher and a deeper awareness. And so when you think about DMT, what's happening? People are ingesting something, and because of that, they are seeing the world at a deeper level of consciousness. And so, do I believe that can fit in a worldview, in a Christian worldview? Yes. The caveat would be, and this is the only thing that stopped me from trying DMT, is that we're warned not to do those things. When it talks about witchcraft or sorcery, particularly in the New Testament, the Greek word for sorcery is not sorceros, pharmakia. And at this point, the best that I can say is that DMT is a sort of shortcut route to that understanding or that plane that I do believe God wants to give us, but should come from the hard work of developing that relationship with God and meditating and praying. I wish I could find it, I'd clip it. I saw a clip with Rogan where he was basically saying that it's been proven that there are some people that can get to those higher states of consciousnesses by meditation and things of that nature. And so if you look at it from that perspective, it's like, oh, you're taking a shortcut to getting that experience. And the reason the shortcut would be bad is that if God is primarily after a relationship with us, and if meditation and silence and self-quieting is the means by which you get there, and the struggle with God, the means by which you get there, then you're essentially robbing God of that journey to circumvent the entire process and get opened up to this altered state of consciousness that has beings populated in it that you don't know where they come from and what their intentions are. And you go into a situation completely naked that's potentially dangerous for you spiritually and mentally, etc. So I do believe that DMT can easily fit within a Christian worldview, but that doesn't mean that you should indulge in it, and it probably means you probably shouldn't. But I'm not yet ready to. You see what I'm saying? So that's how I get with that. Prepare to have your mind blown, Vin. You have tried DMT. Your brain produces it when you dream that you're having a trip. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. And Akumo, what I would say is it's not so much that it falls on the seventh heaven, but it's more about the timeline. Where are we in the timeline? God is not going to eradicate all sin from this dimension, whether it's in the seventh heaven or the first. He's not going to eradicate all sin until we get to the final judgment. So I like your interpretation. I find that seeing God in everything after a DMT trip is very close to a core of a Christian worldview. Yeah, that's interesting. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I'm not convinced that dreams aren't real. I'll take one more question, guys. I'll try to find it for you, XBM. I was actually listening to something 2 days ago about cosmic consciousness and disassociation and alters and things of that nature. And they were able to basically survey lucid dreamers while they were lucid dreaming, and basically they came to this conclusion, and I don't know how they got there. It might just be all hocus pocus nonsense, but they basically came to the conclusion that the beings in the dreams were their own autonomous beings that had their own consciousnesses and who could do math. They were pretty good at addition and subtraction. They were pretty good at multiplication and horrible at addition and subtraction. I've got to find that actual study because it was very, very, very fascinating. Very fascinating. And I just heard about this Chinese philosopher who had a dream that he was a butterfly. And then he woke up, and obviously he wakes up as a human person. But when he was dreaming that he was a butterfly, he was completely united with a butterfly mind, and he felt everything that a butterfly would feel and all the rest of it. And so the question that he had was, am I a human person that I was dreaming that I was a butterfly, or am I a butterfly who now is dreaming that I'm a human person? And how would you be able to tell the difference? Kind of like an Inception thing. Very brilliant, insightful, crazy question. But yeah, the dream world is extremely interesting. Extremely interesting. But is heaven perfect at the end? Yes, heaven is perfect at the end because Hebrews 12 talks about the spirits of the righteous made perfect. So what's going to happen is at the end of the final judgment, our spirits are perfected because of what Christ did on the cross. And those who do not want to be on the team, didn't want to be part of the kingdom, get exiled to a different dimension where there'll never be another cross interaction again. And so when that happens, then yes, heaven will be completely perfect. There'll never be another rebellion. There'll never be any more death, mourning, crying, or pain. You know, that's why the scripture talks about a new heavens, plural, and a new earth. It's new in the sense that even the potentiality for evil is not there, which is something that has never happened in the history of the heavens once the heavens started being populated with created beings. So yes. That's an interesting question. Has there ever been any recorded examples of a person doing something correctly in a dream that they didn't know was the correct way to do it outside of the dream? Well, Sori was just talking to me earlier, Ben, about languages, people being able to speak, or no, altars in a dream. Because one of the premises that I had about dreams until I saw this thing was that, you know, whatever the characters in your mind are in a dream are just extensions of your subconscious. This guy was arguing, no, these are their own independent, autonomous, sentient beings. And Sori was telling me about, because Sori's a lucid dreamer. She's unbelievable stuff. I think I'm scared to ask her stuff, to be honest with you. But basically, she'll be in dreams and one of her altars in her dreams will speak like fluid languages that she doesn't know. So there's that. Very, very interesting stuff. Good day, Vin. First time call, long time listener, if you will. I normally don't feel the need to engage with these kinds of things, but after watching you seemed switched on. So tell me your view on a literal historicity of Jesus in the Bible. I think to deny that Jesus literally walked the earth is... I've got a book by Bart Ehrman, and it's literally called Did Jesus Exist? And Bart Ehrman is rather dismissive of people who deny that Jesus existed. Now, Bart Ehrman is obviously, he's not a Christian. I don't think he's an atheist. I think he calls himself an agnostic. But he compares people like Richard Carrier, etc., who deny that Jesus actually existed and walked the earth. He compares those people to, you know, people who deny the moon landing and things of that nature. Flat earthers, right? It's very hard at the scholarly level to try to argue that Jesus didn't exist. Even the Jesus seminar people, John Dominic Cross and et cetera, they believe that Jesus existed. And that many of the events that are recorded in the Gospels actually took place. The resurrection stuff and all the rest of it. Do I believe that Jesus physically and bodily rose from the dead? Absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely believe that. I do not believe that the radical socio-religious shift that happened is sort of like its own Cambrian explosion, if you know what I'm talking about. It's never been done before in human history, and it's never been even come close to being replicated. So yeah, I believe that Jesus literally performed miracles. I believe that Jesus literally rose from the dead. Now, the literality of the Bible as a whole is a different question. There are many times in the Bible where the Bible will say this is an allegory. The term allegory is used in the book of Ezekiel. The term allegory is used in the book of Galatians. Those are Old and New Testament books respectively. You have Jesus saying this is a parable. You have typology or living analogies and things of that nature. So the Bible is a actual collection of books that span different genres of literature. And so it would be inappropriate to read a text like Psalms, which is wisdom literature or poetic literature, that says, and the trees will clap their hands. It would be inappropriate for a person to say that trees literally have hands and that they're literally clapping. What's cool about the scripture is that when it is speaking in a poetic wisdom fashion, it is abundantly clear that that is so. So that's how I would talk about, interpreting the Bible literally. One of my favorite teachers said, I don't interpret the Bible literally, I interpret it literalistically. Meaning, God's not, some sort of condescending, he should be, right? But it's kind of like, you guys are wise enough to know that when I say the trees will clap their hands, you guys are wise enough to know that I don't mean that trees are literally clapping their hands, right? That it's poetic literature. Then after the transformation, are we not to be ourselves anymore? Isn't it? We will forget everything about our existence as humans, maybe. Would that count us as being us at all? Well, I don't believe that we would forget about our existence as humans. I think at the transformation, we will actually be what we were actually meant to be in the first place. Think of it this way. Akuma, you're an eagle, but sin has clipped your wings. And so you're still a majestic bird, because an eagle is still majestic, but your wings are broken and they're clipped. And that's what sin does. Sin keeps us grounded when we should be soaring. And so at the transformation, you finally get your wings and you finally become whole and complete. At the transformation, you're going to be the most like you that you've ever been, ever, in increasing degrees. I do not believe that you will forget all of your past life and all the rest of it, but the principle of sin that lives inside of you that keeps you grounded and keeps you on the ground and keeps you sad or depressed or angry and compels you to harm others and compels others to harm you, that aspect of your being will be completely gone from you, and the only thing that will be left is what you were originally created for in the first place. And so, no, I think in the new world, when all this thing gets put to rights, you'll be actually the most like yourself you've ever been. Do you believe in any sort of conspiracy or supernatural reason that answers why celebrities seem to pass away at the same time? No. I believe that Betty White was 99 years old, and that's a pretty long lifespan in whatever time period you look at. I also believe that people die every day. What I think happens is if you're a celebrity, then obviously a lot more weight, and so people start putting a lot of emphasis into the significance of those deaths because those people are celebrities. I generally don't look for supernatural explanations for sort of everyday occurrences. Death is an everyday occurrence. I don't want to be trite, but it's an everyday occurrence. And so I don't tend to look for gigantic supernatural explanations. I'm not completely ruling them out, but if I'm honest, most of the time it's not even a thought that I give much thought to. And I also think that it's, to be honest with you, a little bit destructive and disrespectful to the legacies and the memories and the families of these people, because it's like they died, they can't defend themselves, and now here I come saying, oh, like he made a deal with Satan, and this is the devil came back to claim his soul, and now I'm slandering this guy, and he doesn't even have the ability to defend himself, and his family is in so much grief that, so I think it's actually, it's something I wish Christians would stop doing. To be honest with you, I wish we'd stop doing that. I read the peer-reviewed study you mentioned about the woman who was told by voices about her tumor. It was incredible. Just adds another brick to my naturalism is ridiculous. Yeah, naturalism and physicalism is just, it's untenable if you really look at just the peer-reviewed documents that are out there, between NDEs, between that stuff, between what I was talking about with dreams. I mean, it's just, it's unbelievable. And look, a lot of this stuff, the Bible doesn't even dare to talk about. Like, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. At the end of this age, what happens to the physical universe, stars, planets, galaxies? We're very, very small compared to the whole universe. I agree, Metal Mark. And Metal Mark, I do not believe that those things go away. I believe that stars, galaxies, planets, and all the rest of it are there for us to explore. I believe that there are beings that are there that inhabit those places, and that's one of the reasons of what I said. In the new world, we will not have preachers, but we will have scientists, because I believe that science is going to be front and center, and it's how we're going to be more and more awed by God in the new world. And maybe the scientists will be the preachers, because they're going to come back from some star system somewhere and report to us, you guys will not believe what the hell we just saw. So yeah, I believe it's there. And I believe that, if I put my cards on the table, Jesus said that if we overcome, that means that if we hold on to the faith till we die, that he will give us a right to sit on his throne the way that he overcame and sat on his Father's throne. And I believe that our destiny as human beings, as image bearers of God, is that we are second only to Christ in the universe, and that we will be ruling the universe benevolently, exploring the universe. Max Lucado said it kind of cornily, but that the universe will be our playground, and that's what I believe. So I believe all of those things are going to be in play in the new world. For sure. I know you have a Reformed background, and you're also a fan of N.T. Wright. I love N.T. Wright. Why do some Reformed folks dislike Wright so much? It's clear that he affirms the five solas, and he said he's a Calvinist. Well, it's a new perspective on Paul. It's him saying that Galatians is not about forensic justification and all the rest of it. I do not perceive N.T. Wright to be a works righteousness guy. I don't believe that he's positing works righteousness justification. If you look at John Piper's sermons on Romans chapter 2, that our works will be judged as proof of genuine faith, not as the cause of justifying grace. So N.T. Wright, to me, is what happens when you do not function with nuance and when there becomes a feeding frenzy, because he doesn't toe the party line in regards to Paul and Pauline theology. And I don't agree with everything he says on justification, but he's not saying anything that John Piper hasn't said. So that's why I suspect. Watch out. Okay, guys. I think with that, I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you guys for hanging out in the InsomniStream. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for hanging out. I think if I'm in the same circumstance, I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know if it's gonna be at this time. But I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I did not think it was going to last this long, and I certainly didn't think that you guys were gonna hang out. So, holy smokes. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for the questions. Really appreciate it. And they were very good questions. Really insightful questions. Not going to say I was surprised. Well, I'm a little bit surprised. I'm not going to lie. Because it's kind of late. And, well, it's not late anymore, I guess. But thank you guys. And it was good seeing you, Vin, Perk. Good seeing all you beautiful people. You guys take care of yourselves out there. Stay safe.